All right, so we're going to do a little bit of training today on Safepoint, how to use them to get proposals for commercial clients, and then it's also a really nice way to be able to get accord forms. So you would log in through our RoboForm portal and access Safepoint through our commercial line. So Safepoint, they are an admitted carrier. They're in the state of Florida. They do homeowners and commercial, and they will do business owner policies and business owner policies. So that means they'll do the property, general liability, business income, and then some of the little bells and whistles endorsements on one form, which is really nice. So how do we get quotes with them? This is what the video I'm really going to show here. So we're going to go in, click new business quote. And then I kind of say, with a lot of these things, especially when you're online with a carrier, it's kind of like follow the bouncing ball, right? None of this stuff is rocket science. You're pretty much going to go in and be curious, click around, look and see, okay, what's the system asking me? So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to click new applications. Now, they do have options if I wanted just property or I wanted just liability. Multi-peril package puts all of that together. And traditionally, that's what people want, right? People want sort of consistency, ease, one-stop shop, however you want to look at that and put that, okay? Always helpful too, and there's other videos that we've got on it. I'm not going to do it right now for, again, sake of time, but we definitely recommend when you're getting ready to do a proposal like this or get into a system, have all your ducks in a row and have a fact finder completed, right? And again, you can get fact finders on our toolbox. Fill out all the info. It'll just make it easier for you to come back to, okay? So for now, I'm going to fill in here name of the client. I'm going to put effective date. Is it an LLC? Is it a corporation? Is it a nonprofit? Okay. FEIN, SSN, frankly, on this two things, you can go to Sunbiz and look up and see if they have an FEIN. If that's a term you're not familiar with, it stands for Federal Employee Identification Number. Sometimes you'll also hear it referred to as a tax ID. Okay. And you can also think of it as sort of like the equivalent of frankly, like a social security number for a business. So I just went, and a lot of this is public record. I just went online and pulled this up. If we didn't have it, just to get the quote, I would really put anything in. And then if we were going to move forward with the client, we obviously could get that firmed up. Okay. They do want to know target pricing. So target pricing basically says, hey, where do we need to be on this? What approximately do we need to be in terms of a proposal? DBA you'd fill out if there was a DBA, doing business as. Obviously now putting in client name. So anytime you've got a business, you also need to know who runs that business. Is it a new venture? Yes or no? And then what do you want? Property, general liability. Crime is often something that you would really only have if you've got employees. And Safepoint actually does a lot of lesser's risk, which is good to know. And lesser's risk is I own a building, but I'm renting it out to tenants, right? So this is like a 22,000 square foot strip center in Tampa, okay? So I'm going to take the crime off for now because they really don't have any employees. Crime referred to in commercial insurance is really if there's like employee theft of funds. That's what commercial crime primarily is for, okay? And then we're going to put the location, address. Again, as you're filling out and working on commercial insurance, it's always important to understand, or personal lines insurance, it's always important to understand the difference between mailing address versus physical address. Got to make sure you're understanding, what exactly am I insuring. Okay, and then it's going to ask for the year built, and put year built, and then click continue to coverages. Okay. The next thing it's going to do, it's going to ask me for a building valuation. So, this is super important. They actually stop you here. You can't go any further for what it's worth. Like if we tried to click anything else, it's not going to allow it. It will go and pull through a lot of the information that they're going to be able to get through Property Appraiser. Okay. So I normally let it pre-fill for most of what it's got in there. Now, if I know something's off or I know there's a big deal, I'll obviously go in and address that, okay? But for the most part, I'll let it pull what it's doing from Property Appraiser. And again, it's just pulling, year built, construction, a lot of these types of things. Now it may give me some error messages for some things that it doesn't like. So on this, I'm going to click back, and I'm going to click back again. And I have a feeling it's because it's got all of these built-ins, right? And again, it may be because of how this is sort of being pulled through. So For sake of time right now and for sake of the video, I'm going to take a lot of these off just because I don't want to spend the time to go through each one and verify what it is. Just high level, if we think about, what are we insuring? From a property standpoint, one of the most important things is we need to understand the square footage, right? So that's what I'm going to look up right now just to verify the total square footage, right? So I'm going to go to property appraiser on another screen here. I'm going to type in Hillsborough County Property Appraiser, and then I'll pull that up just to make sure this is accurate. And the rest of it was more going to be location-based, based on, for the general liability, like what is the underlying actual exposure, right? So there's, from the general liability perspective, they do want to understand that. Really what I'm trying to establish right now is from the property perspective and get an idea of what property is going to look like. So I'm in here right now. I see the total heated square footage. So I'm going to put that in. I'm also going to update this and see if there's something that makes more sense for the primary building use, right? So you see kind of education, entertainment, food sales, healthcare, industrial. We really probably want to look for something like store or strip center or something like that. Every replacement cost estimator is going to kind of show it a little differently depending on how that is. And so for now, as I kind of scan through this, I'm going to put this as mixed retail. Okay, so that's probably the easiest thing to put is mixed retail. And we'll click continue. And now it's giving me a hard time because it wants the square footages to match. So we'll say that. Okay. Okay, now it's going to go in again, pulling the rest of the info. So it's asking exterior wall finish. So most of these in most large strip centers are going to be some level of either masonry, painted masonry on the outside, or some sort of stucco. Keep in mind, masonry non-combustible is what also most of these are rated as. And what does that mean? Masonry non-combustible is primarily a concrete building that also has concrete in the roof. Okay, so if you think about that, your traditional home, for example, you may have a roof, but often the roof and the inside, the trusses are wood, and wood burns quicker than concrete block. In a commercial building, if you think of like your traditional commercial building that you go to, you go to Walmart or whatever for, or Target, like these are big buildings that have a lot of poured concrete and steel and or concrete in the roof. And so basically they're going to get a better rating from a insurance perspective because steel and concrete burn slower than wood. Okay. Now that's also going to impact the replacement cost in terms of what it's going to cost to rebuild. So there's kind of a twofold thing there. So long story short, I was able to get the replacement cost estimate, coming in about 3.2 million. We always look at price per square foot. We're in obviously very rising rates for inflation and everything else right now. So $142 a square foot, really probably not too far off in terms of what the client needs. Okay, so we're going to click that. The system's not really going to let me do anything less than, the replacement cost. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. No contents because they own it, but they don't have any contents there. I'm going to go and I'm going to put my deductibles. We normally recommend, depending on the size of the building, probably at least a $5,000 all other peril deductible. From a co-insurance perspective, we normally pick 80%. And the reason being that gives the client a little more wiggle room in the event of a claim with regards to how the building's insured. In general, in general, co-insurance says if I'm at 80% and the building costs $1 million to rebuild, I would need to be at least at $800,000. If I drop below $800,000, I can get penalized by the insurance company. Obviously, if I have co-insurance, it's either 90 or 100%. That bar, if you will, goes up. In other words, the requirement of what I have to have in terms of coverage would go up a little bit. It would also mean I'd have a little more flexibility in my building amount. We normally exclude terrorism. Most clients do. Frankly, it's expensive, and there's a lot of limitations even with what the terrorism coverage covers. We normally do recommend the property extension. Improvements and betterments doesn't really apply. This would be if they were doing, say, a lease build out, right? Or I own a building and I'm doing some improvements on it. This is not going to really apply in this situation. Okay, now it's going to ask me business income. What is it? So I'm going to click rental property because that's what it is. Coverage method, and again, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. Just always check monthly limit of indemnity. Basically, if you do co-insurance, you could have co-insurance penalties on your business income. If you do monthly limit of indemnity, you don't have any co-insurance and penalties on your business income. We'll click extra expense coverage. That's an important one as well. You know, and even pops up here and says extra expense helps avoid, minimize interruption to the business. And it could be like, hey, I've got moving costs as a result of the claim, and these are costs that aren't contemplated in my pure loss of revenue. Monthly limit of indemnity, I would pick 1/6. And then spoilage, not really necessary for this type of risk. Ordinance and law, again, traditionally leave that off for now. These are all little tweaks, bells and whistles, if you will, that clients can do. And depending on what their thoughts are, concerns, certainly things we could add if they wanted. Now we're picking the, basically the risk code, if you will, like what is it? So what do we have here? So we're going to look for mercantile. So if you see here mercantile, it's going to be multiple occupancy, large area over 15,000 square feet, not class rated, right? So they're all, mercantile is basically service. And that's, you know, these commercial strip centers traditionally have the cell phone store, the barber, the tax guy, the subway, you know, all those sorts of things. And that's the way to identify that multiple occupancy. Okay. And we're going to put the square footage in here again. And then we're going to go click one story. Okay. And then establishment type. Again, we're going to say mercantile, click continue. Okay, there's no crime coverage. We're going to go to the general liability. And here we always want to do general liability at least 1 million, 2 million. Even though they allow options less than that, we never really want to do less than that. Frankly, it's just not wise, and the coverage isn't that much more expensive. Okay. Other things here, hired and non-owned coverage. Again, when they don't have employees or team members, that doesn't come in. If they did, if it was an exposure that had that, we would want to add that. Non-owned coverages, let's say a team member is running an errand for the business, they're picking up lunch, and they get into an accident, and the business gets sued because of saying, you know, the team member was acting on behalf of the business. Okay. For classification here, again, most of this is going to be lesser's risk. It means I own the building, I'm renting it out, and we're going to see here building, bank, mercantile, maintained by the insured, lesser's risk, not for profit. Okay. It's kind of confusing how they write this. What we want is other than not for profit, right? So that basically means for profit. The class code is 61217. That's a common class code for lesser's risk. If there was any additional insureds, we'd add it there. Any claims history, we'd add it here. Okay. It's now saying, hey, we need further underwriting. That's okay. We're going to click next. Now it's going to start asking me some questions on the building, and a lot of this stuff you're going to see actually mirrors what you would see on a cord form, right? So now it's going to ask for your updates. I'm going to put updates in here. Okay. Additional interest. This is where you would put mortgagee clause, right? Okay. I'm going to take that off actually for now, just for sake of time. Okay. And then click continue. And it's going to ask for info on the client. So we're going to want to get mailing address. Again, we kind of said mailing address is almost always going to be separate than the physical address, especially when it's lesser's risk. Okay. And 3687. Put the client's phone number in here. And again, the nice thing with this system is that once we fill this in, and this may seem or feel a little bit time consuming, but trust me, if we compare this to doing an accord form in the system, in a management system, it's almost always longer. Let's put the client's email in. Again, we're going to say, what is it? This is just asking for the date it started. So this client happened to buy this new last year. So primary operations, I'm going to put lesser's risk. Other, LRO for short. I'm just going to put commercial strip center. Okay. Prior carrier. I just put 2BA for the policy number. They don't need that. I'll put 2022. And then we'll put the premium. Okay. 500 and then package. Okay. Then we're going to come to the commercial questionnaire. And a lot of this, we're almost done, by the way. A lot of this is going to mirror what we're going to see on an Accord form. Traditionally, like your Accord 125 or your Accord 140. So, you know, do they have a GC or contracting license? No. Most of these are going to be no. Are they manufacturer's rep? No. Are they distributor? No. There's a few that are going to be yes. And if you don't click yes, the system will kind of like error you out and say, oh, no, this, you know, you can't do it. You have to go back in to just to this screen. You don't have to start like all over, but all these like yes, no's, you'd have to go back in and redo. So any interest of the other tenants? No. Corporate manager? No. There's really two that I'm going to highlight here. Trust me, this happens to me all the time. So if it happens to you, it's not a big deal. Here's one. Does the insured maintain current certificates of liability showing endorsement in their favor? Okay. So that needs to be a yes. And basically what that's saying is, hey, I've got a commercial strip center. And let's say I've got, 15 tenants in there. Like we said, the cell phone store, the barbershop, Subway, the tax guy, real estate agent, whatever else is in there, nail salon. They want to make sure that the tenants have their own insurance and name our client as additional insured, which is almost always how it is with regards to leases. Well, that's important. Okay. Most of the rest of these are going to be no. Other subsidiaries, unless it's a very unusual risk, they're almost all going to be no. Okay. So I'm going to put these as no, with the exception of there's going to be one important one, which is, are the electrical panels on circuit breakers? Okay. So they always want to make sure, yes, you're on circuit breakers. Okay. And if you're not on circuit breakers, that's, kind of a big deal. Okay. And it's going to say continue to upload if there's anything to upload. Okay. And then we're going to go and see continue. And it's going to ask for the agent's name. So put that in. And then I'm going to put that. Certify, I want to say submit. Okay, cool. So, and listen, I know I'm doing training talking through this, but let's say realistically that took me 10 minutes. That's not too bad. And then here's kind of the magic at the end. So not only are we getting a shot to say, okay, well, what can Safepoint do for us? But when I click here for the insurance application, I've got my Accords filled out. Okay. Now this is really nice because what we can do is we can submit this to our back office support team along with our fact finder, and they can input all this in the system, which will save you a lot of time. Okay, so that's really how we look at Safepoint, look at doing a business owner's policy with them and getting Accord forms. Any questions, let me know. Thanks. Where's my recorder? I'm trying to stop my recording here.